Ever wonder what it's like to be a man standing on the edge of everything he once believed in, fighting to keep his family together in a world that seems determined to tear it apart? I never expected my life to take such a sharp turn, but here I am, 38 years old, living in a quiet, weather-beaten corner of Tampa, Florida, where palm trees sway like silent witnesses to the struggles of everyday people. I work 2 jobs to make ends meet, scraping together just enough to keep my head above water, and to make sure my 2 daughters, Chloe and Emma, are taken care of. Chloe, my fiery 9-year-old with curly hair that always seems to be caught in the wind, is a constant reminder of everything I'm fighting for. And Emma, my 5-year-old with eyes as bright as the stars, is still at the age where she believes every superhero story, every fairy tale ending is real. They are my world, and every morning, no matter how exhausted I am, I wake up for them. I do everything for them. We live in a small, run-down apartment in a neighborhood where the sound of sirens is just as common as the hum of the old air conditioner that barely works. The walls are thin, and the nights are filled with the echo of passing cars and the distant sounds of shouting neighbors. Our place may not be much, but it's ours. It's home. By day, I work as a mechanic at a local garage, covered in grease and sweat, fixing whatever cars I can get my hands on. I hustle to make sure I have enough money to buy groceries, pay the rent, and hopefully save enough to send Chloe to that little private school she's been dreaming of. By night, I'm driving a delivery truck, picking up orders across the city. The work is brutal, and sometimes I wonder how much longer I can keep it up. But then I see Chloe's bright eyes, or Emma's tiny hand reaching out for me, and I remember why I keep going. Despite the loneliness that sometimes creeps in when the girls are asleep and I'm sitting in front of a pile of bills, I remind myself that they're all I need. But deep down, I feel the pressure building. It's not just the bills or the endless hours of work that weigh on midst the fear of failing them. But there's something else about my life that most people don't know. Something that most people would never guess. I wasn't always this guy. I wasn't always the man who worked 2 jobs to survive. I was once part of a much bigger world. A world that promised me everything: wealth, prestige, power. A world I left behind. I used to belong to a family that everyone knew. The Taylors of my family were synonymous with success. My father, Harrison Taylor, built his fortune through real estate, and my mother, Caroline, was always the picture of elegance and influence. They had everything: a mansion overlooking the bay, yachts docked at the marina, a reputation that made people bow when they entered a room. My sister, Olivia, was the golden child: perfect grades, perfect looks, perfect life. I was supposed to follow in my father's footsteps, take over the family business, marry someone from the right social circle, and live a life of comfort. But everything changed the day I met Jenna. Jenna wasn't from my world. She didn't come from money. She didn't have an Ivy League education or a family legacy that stretched back generations. She was just a waitress at a local diner in the heart of Tampa, with a smile that could light up a room and a laugh that made everything else fade into the background. Her eyes had this quiet understanding that spoke louder than any words could. I didn't care that she wasn't part of the world my parents had planned for me. In fact, it was the very fact that she was different, that she didn't care about the things I was supposed to care about, that drew me to her. I was supposed to marry someone with the same pedigree as me, but instead, I fell in love with Jenna, and one night, after 6 months of sneaking around behind my family's back, I asked her to marry me. It wasn't a big ceremony or anything extravagant. We didn't have the money for that. It's just a small, intimate wedding at a courthouse with only a few friends to witness. My parents refused to come. My sister called me a disappointment. But I didn't care. I loved her. And for the first time in my life, I was choosing something for myself. Our marriage wasn't perfect. Nothing is. But Jenna gave me 2 beautiful daughters, and for a while, that was enough. We struggled, yes, but we had each other, and that's all that mattered. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect it. It all came crashing down 2 years ago when Jenna left me. The words she said still echo in my head. "I thought you'd be my way out, Daniel, but you're just like everyone else. Ordinary." She left with a wealthier man. A man who could give her everything I couldn't. And just like that, my world came crashing down. I was left holding 2 little girls, my heart shattered, wondering if I had made a mistake by choosing love over wealth. In the days after she left, I found myself drowning in regret. Did I make the wrong choice? Did I fail them? Was it worth it? But every time I look at Chloe and Emma, I remind myself that I don't need wealth. I don't need my family's approval. I just need them. And yet, despite my pride, despite the fierce love I have for my daughters, there's still a part of me that wishes things were different. Wishes that my parents would reach out, that they would see that I'm not a failure, but they never do, not after Jenna left. Then, one afternoon, something happened that changed everything. I was coming home from my second job, my body aching, when I found a pristine envelope slipped under my door. Inside was an invitation to Olivia's wedding. Olivia, the sister who had once been my idol, the one I could never measure up to. The wedding was going to be lavish, of course. It would be held at the Grand Royal Resort on the Bay, a venue so expensive that only people with connections could afford it. I stood there for a moment, the invitation in my hand, feeling the weight of everything it represented. Part of me wanted to toss it in the trash, say to myself, I don't need their world. But another part of me still wanted to believe there could be a chance for reconciliation. I looked at Chloe and Emma, who were busy playing in the other room, their innocent laughter ringing out like music. Maybe they deserved to know their family. Maybe they deserved a chance to be part of that world, even if I didn't. "Girls," I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. "Aunt Olivia is getting married. Grandma and Grandpa invited us to the wedding. Do you want to go?" Chloe stopped what she was doing, her expression unreadable, but Emma was thrilled. "A wedding? Will there be cake? Will there be dancing, Daddy?" I smiled, despite the knot in my stomach. "Yes, there'll be cake," I said, trying to sound cheerful. "Lots of cake." Chloe, though, wasn't as enthusiastic. She tilted her head, her dark eyes searching mine, almost as if she knew something was wrong. "Do you want to go, Daddy?" she asked, her voice soft but sharp. I hesitated. I wanted to tell her the truth, that I was afraid, but I couldn't. "I think it'll be fun," I said, forcing a smile. "There'll be flowers, music, and definitely cake for you, Emma." And just like that, they were excited. Chloe's brow furrowed a little, but Emma Mum bounced around the room like it was the best thing that had ever happened to her. We would go for them, for a chance to be part of something bigger, even if I knew deep down I was still just the son they looked down on. But what would happen when we walked into that glittering world again? Would it be different this time? Or would they see me, see us, the same way they always had? How far would you go to prove that family isn't defined by wealth or status, but by love and loyalty? The days leading up to Olivia's wedding were filled with a whirlwind of emotions I couldn't quite name. I spent more time in front of the mirror than I ever had in years, adjusting my tie, brushing off the wrinkles in my old suit, old enough to be a relic from my wedding to Jenna. My reflection was a face worn by time, by responsibility, by the weight of too many long nights and fleeting dreams. I didn't have much to offer. No designer tuxedo, no shiny shoes, no gleaming watch. But I had Chloe and Emmett, two bright souls who somehow still managed to find joy in the smallest things. I wanted them to feel like they belonged, even in a room where they'd be out of place. I took them to the second-hand store for their dresses. Emma's eyes lit up when she found a pale lavender dress with lace trim. She clutched it to her chest like a treasure, bouncing on her toes with excitement. Chloe, on the other hand, picked out a simple, elegant black dress, one that somehow seemed to match the thoughtful weight of her spirit. When she tried it on, she looked so grown up, so much like the young woman she was becoming, that it nearly broke my heart. "You both look beautiful," I said, my voice catching in my throat. I meant it. For me, the suit wasn't nearly as important as seeing my daughters looking like little angels, proud and full of life. As for me, well, the suit fit just barely. It was tight in places, frayed at the elbows, but it would have to do. I could only hope it wouldn't draw too much attention to the worn edges of my life. We arrived at the Grand Royal Resort the morning of the wedding, and it felt like stepping into another world. The hotel was massive, an almost oppressive tower of glass and steel, reflecting the sun in a way that made everything else seem small and insignificant. The valet didn't even look at me as I parked the truck. I could see him eyeing my old suit, the chipped rims of my truck, and the way I fumbled with the keys as I opened the door. I held Chloe and Emma's hands as we walked through the lobby. It was the kind of place where every marble floor gleamed under the chandeliers, where the air was thick with the smell of fresh flowers and expensive perfume. We were ushered past gleaming faces, all of them lost in their own conversations, their own worlds.
Ow.
No one looked at us twice. The reception hall was something out of a dream. The walls were adorned with towering floral arrangements, and the tables draped in crisp white cloths or set with gold-rimmed plates and silver cutlery. The guests, wealthy, powerful, polished, it stood like a living tableau, smiling, laughing, pretending that everything in life was perfect. But for me, it felt like a cage. Every step I took, every word I exchanged, seemed to carry the weight of an invisible label. Outsider, failure, the son who couldn't live up to the family name. Chloe, despite her initial hesitation, was beginning to feel the magic of the place. She marveled at the chandeliers, her wide eyes reflecting the soft golden glow. Emma, though, was less impressed by the spectacle and more taken by the idea of cake and dancing. "Daddy, look, it's just like the princess stories," she said, tugging on my sleeve. I smiled down at her, trying to push aside the feeling that I didn't belong here. But then Chloe caught my gaze. She was watching me closely. Her brow furrowed in that way she did when she was trying to understand something deeper than what was immediately in front of her. "Are you okay, Daddy?" she asked softly, her voice almost drowned by the noise of the room. I didn't want to lie to her, but I didn't want to drag her into the weight of my insecurities either. I just gave her a small, reassuring smile. "Yeah, sweetheart, I'm fine." But deep down, I was anything but fine. I scanned the room looking for any sign of my parents. My father's tall frame, always so imposing, always so confident, was easy to spot near the front. He was talking to someone, his expression sharp and unwavering, as if the entire world revolved around him. My mother, Carolyn, was seated at a table nearby, her flawless makeup and pristine dress making her look every bit the queen of the room. And Olivia, my perfect sister. She was radiant in her wedding gown, her face glowing with a happiness I couldn't understand. Standing next to the man who would be her husband, Lucas Williams. A man I barely knew, but who had the same polished look as the rest of the room. He fit right in. I wanted to believe that things could be different, that somehow tonight might offer a chance to heal the wounds between my family and me, but I knew better. I wasn't naive enough to think they would suddenly embrace me and my girls. After all, it had been years since I left their world. Years since I walked away from the life they had laid out for me. The reception began, and the atmosphere became more extravagant with each passing moment. The orchestra played soft, classical music, and the guests chatted, clinking their glasses, their laughter like a performance. It was all so perfect, so fake. And then, as if on cue, Olivia took the stage. The room fell silent as she stood tall, radiating confidence. She looked every bit the picture-perfect bride, the star of the evening, the woman who had everything. Lucas stood beside her, tall, handsome, the perfect match for her. They made the ideal couple. But I couldn't focus on that. I couldn't ignore the way my parents looked at me, or rather didn't look at me. They weren't even acknowledging our presence. Their eyes flicked away as soon as they landed on me and the girls, as if we were a part of the background they could ignore. And then Olivia spoke. "Family," she said, her voice sweet but laced with a subtle sharpness, "is what matters most. We must protect our family's happiness, no matter what." She paused, and for a split second, her eyes flickered toward our table. Then, her voice turned cold and calculated. "And I know my brother, Daniel, is here. Isn't that right, Daniel?" My heart skipped a beat. I didn't want to stand. I didn't want to be the center of attention. Not here, not now. But all around me, people were turning their heads. They were looking at us, studying us like we were an exhibit. I looked down at Chloe and Emma. Chloe was biting her lip, trying to hold back her emotions, while Emma, ever the innocent one, was simply staring at me with confusion in her big, round eyes. With a sigh, I stood, raising my hand awkwardly, and nodded. "I'm here." The waiters were quick to hand me a microphone. I took it, my fingers shaking slightly, trying to hold it steady as my heart pounded in my chest. I could feel the weight of the room's eyes on me. It felt like they were all waiting for me to say something foolish, something that would give them an excuse to laugh, to mock, to put me in my place. But before I could speak, Olivia's voice rang out again, sweet but sharp. You know, Daniel has always been unconventional. He chose a life outside of the one we wanted for him, married a waitress, raised 2 beautiful daughters, without the comforts our family could have given him. He's working 2 jobs just to scrape by, and yet, here he is. Still trying to be a part of our world. The laughter that followed was like a cold slap to the face. I wanted to leave. I wanted to take Chloe and Emma and run. But then I looked at my girls. Looked at how Chloe's shoulders were tensing up, how Emma was clutching my hand in confusion. I couldn't let them see me crumble. I couldn't let them think that this was my fault. I forced a smile, though it felt like the hardest thing I'd ever done. I'm just here for them, I said, my voice quiet but steady, for Chloe and Emma. That's all that matters to me. But the room wasn't done with me yet. The mocking laughter continued, and I could see Olivia's smug smile, her eyes filled with triumph. It wasn't just the wedding they were trying to ruin, it was me. I wanted to leave. To walk out with my girls, to find a place where we could be at peace. But just as I was about to turn around, Chloe did something that would change everything. She stood up. The room seemed to freeze as Chloe stood up. For a brief, heart-stopping moment, everything went silent. I looked down at her, my eyes wide, my breath caught in my chest. Her small hands gripped the microphone like she was holding onto a lifeline. Her eyes, once filled with uncertainty, were now steady and wavering. Chloe had always been my quiet observer, the one who noticed things before anyone else did. But now she wasn't just observing, she was speaking, and her voice so young, so innocent, cut through the thick air like a razor. "Uncle Lucas," she said, her voice trembling only slightly, but sharp enough for the entire room to hear. "Aunt Olivia, the baby isn't yours. It's someone else's." The words hit like a thunderclap, the sound reverberating in my ears long after she spoke. I felt my heart stop, my stomach twisting as the reality of what Chloe had just said sank in. The room, still frozen for a moment, erupted into shocked murmurs. I could hear gasps, and then the whispers started louder, quicker, rippled through the guests like wildfire. Chloe didn't back down. Her small hands clenched tighter around the microphone, her eyes locked on Olivia. She was so small, yet so brave. She looked like a warrior. She wasn't scared. And for the first time, I wasn't scared either. "What? What is she talking about?" Olivia stammered, her perfect smile slipping as her face drained of color. She looked at Lucas, and for the first time, I saw something like doubt flicker across her eyes. But she quickly masked it with a tight-lipped smile. "Chloe," Olivia said, her voice shaking now, "you don't know what you're saying. You're just a little girl. This isn't how we do things." But Chloe wasn't done. She lifted the microphone to her lips again, her voice firm, each word crystal clear. "I heard you, Aunt Olivia. I heard you crying at Grandma's house last month. You said the baby wasn't Uncle Lucas's. You said it was someone else's. You said you had to hide it so you could marry him, so the family wouldn't lose everything." The room went quiet again, the kind of quiet that makes your skin prickle, the kind where you can feel every pair of eyes on you, even if they aren't looking directly at you. I could hear the murmurs turn into shocked, hushed whispers. And then I heard my father's voice. "You little liar," Harrison Taylor bellowed, his voice shaking with fury. His face was turning red, his fists clenched at his sides. "How dare you speak like that about our family?" He stormed toward Chloe, but my feet were already moving, pulling me in front of her, my hand outstretched. "Dad, stop," I said, my voice hard. I'd never spoken to him like that before, but I wasn't backing down now. "You need to listen to what she's saying." Harrison's eyes flashed with anger, but there was something else there too, fear. He knew deep down that Chloe was telling the truth, and that scared him more than anything. The room was spinning, but Chloe was still standing tall, her small body quivering only slightly. Her eyes locked on Olivia, who was now visibly sweating, her perfect composure shattered. "Chloe, please," Olivia said, her voice breaking. "I can explain. Just forget this, okay? We'll talk about it later." But Chloe wasn't interested in explanations anymore. She wasn't interested in pretending. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of determination and fear. And then she spoke again, quieter but so much louder than anything I'd heard in this room before. "Daddy, I don't want to pretend anymore. I want everyone to know the truth. I felt a lump rise in my throat, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. My little girl, the one I swore I'd protect, had just exposed the truth. Not just about Olivia, but about the kind of family I came from, the kind of world I had walked away from years ago. A world of lies, of secrets, of things I could never be a part of again. I looked at my parents. My mother, Caroline, was frozen in place, her face pale, her eyes wide with disbelief. Olivia, still recovering from the shock of Chloe's words, stumbled backward, her hand gripping Lucas's arm for support. Lucas, the man she was about to marry, stood still, his expression unreadable, but his body rigid. His jaw was clenched tight, his fists hanging at his sides, and I could see the hurt in his eyes. This wasn't just about Olivia anymore. This was about the whole family being exposed. All their secrets, all their lies, laid bare for the world to see. And that's when it happened. The thing I had feared for so long. My father's rage reached its boiling point, and he stormed the stage, his face crimson, his steps heavy with fury. "You've ruined everything," he shouted, his voice seething. "This is a wedding, a celebration of family, of legacy. And you've chosen to bring shame upon it. You've destroyed your sister's future, your family's name, all because of this absurd lie." I stood my ground. "No, Dad," I said, my voice steady. "Chloe didn't destroy anything. She just spoke the truth. You and Mom are the ones who've been hiding things, pretending everything was perfect when it wasn't." But Harrison wasn't listening. He turned on me, his face contorted in disgust. "You're no son of mine," he spat, his words bitter and full of venom. "You're a disgrace. You left this family. You abandoned your birthright. Now you let your daughter speak these lies in front of everyone. You've dragged us all down." I felt my heart drop, but I wasn't going to back down. Not this time. Not in front of Chloe, not in front of Emma, and not in front of all the people who had always looked down on me. "Maybe I did abandon you," I said quietly, "but I didn't abandon my daughters. I didn't abandon love. I didn't abandon the truth. And that's more than I can say for you, or for Olivia." The silence in the room was suffocating, but it was different now. People weren't looking at me like I was the outsider anymore. Their eyes were full of something else, something I couldn't name, but I could feel it. And then, just as everything seemed to be falling apart, I saw Lucas step forward. His eyes were still cold, but there was something in them now, something that resembled respect. "You're right," he said quietly, his voice carrying across the hall. "This isn't just about a wedding. This is about what's real. And what's real is that Olivia's been hiding the truth. You can't keep pretending." Olivia's face turned ashen. She stumbled back, her perfect facade crumbling before everyone's eyes. Chloe, still holding the microphone, took a deep breath and looked at me. "Daddy, I told the truth, and I'm proud of you. I'm proud of us." And that was when I knew for certain that I didn't need my family's approval. I didn't need their validation. I had Chloe, I had Emma, and no matter what happened in that room, no matter how they looked at us, we were stronger than they could ever understand. The atmosphere in the room had shifted. No longer was it the picture-perfect, glamorous event I had expected. It had become something else entirely and unraveling, a public display of secrets and lies, shame and truth, colliding in front of hundreds of eyes. The guests, once enthralled by the luxury, the beauty of Olivia's wedding, were now caught in the middle of a family storm. Whispers filled the air like electric currents, passing between tables, darting from person to person. Some guests had already begun to stand, their chairs scraping the floor as they shuffled away, unsure of what they had just witnessed. Others lingered, eyes wide as if they couldn't quite believe the truth that had just come to light. I stood there, my hand still on Chloe's small shoulder, trying to steady her in the storm. She didn't flinch. Chloe was unshaken. If anything, she seemed relieved, like the weight of keeping this secret had been lifted from her tiny shoulders. But I saw something in her eyes, a quiet sorrow, a maturity beyond her years that made my heart ache. She wasn't just protecting me, she was protecting herself too. And as for Olivia, I could see the carefully crafted smile that had once been her weapon. Her armor had completely shattered. She was now just another woman, broken, exposed, and vulnerable. I looked at Lucas, who stood silently, his posture stiff. There was still tension in his eyes, but something had shifted. He wasn't angry anymore. If anything, he looked conflicted. "Lucas," Olivia said, her voice quivering now, the self-assurance gone, replaced with desperation. "You have to believe me. I didn't want any of this to happen. I didn't want to hurt you. I just didn't know how to tell you." He didn't reply immediately, just stood there, his gaze locked on her, his jaw tense, as if he were searching for something inside her that had been lost long ago. Finally he spoke, his voice low but firm. "I don't know what to believe anymore, Olivia." He paused, taking a step back. Glancing toward the guests who were still watching, "You've lied to me, to everyone. This isn't just about a wedding anymore. This is about your lies, your choices. I can't just pretend they didn't happen." Olivia's face crumpled, and I saw her take a shaky step forward, reaching out as if to touch him, but he stepped away. "Please," she whispered, her voice broken. "Don't leave me. Don't do this. Not now." But Lucas didn't budge. "I can't stay," he said softly. "Not when everything we've built is based on lies." And just like that, he turned, walking out of the reception hall, leaving Olivia standing alone on the stage. I could see the tears beginning to streak down her cheeks as she crumpled into herself, her hands gripping the sides of her wedding gown as though she could somehow hold it all together. The crowd, once wrapped with admiration for her, was now filled with murmurs of sympathy, skepticism, and judgment. My father, who had been standing in the corner with my mother, was the first to break the silence. His face, usually a picture of authority, was now flushed with fury. His anger didn't just target Olivia, it came crashing down on me, too. "This is your fault," he snapped, his voice rising in an angry hiss. "You brought this chaos into our family. Your daughter ruined everything. Everything I've worked for." I felt the heat of his gaze sear me as I looked back at him. For so many years, I'd tried to earn his approval. I'd bent over backwards, running from one job to the next, wearing myself thin, all for the hope that maybe, just maybe, he would see me as worthy. But now, with the truth hanging in the air, I realized that it was never about worth. Not to him. It was about control, about power, about keeping up appearances. And then, Chloe, still clutching my hand, turned to me, her voice small but steady. "Daddy," she said softly, "did I do the right thing?" Her question hit me like a ton of bricks. Did I really want to answer that? Did I want to tell her that she had just single-handedly destroyed the facade of our family, exposed our deepest secrets to the world? But looking down at her, I saw not a child trying to destroy something, but a young girl standing tall in her own truth. Her truth. "Yes, Chloe," I said, my voice cracking with pride. "You did the right thing. Stood up for what's real." I could feel my father's glare from across the room, but I didn't look back. I didn't need to. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of him. No, I wasn't afraid of anyone. I turned to my mother, her expression stony, her lips tightly pressed together as if she were holding back a storm. "Don't look at us like that," I said, my voice hard. "We're not the ones who ruined anything. You and Dad did that long before Chloe ever picked up the microphone. Maybe you should be more concerned with what's really been happening in this family for the last decade." She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. She simply stared at me, her face flushed with anger, her eyes burning with something darker. I could see the hurt in her too, but there was no compassion left. She was too wrapped up in her own world to see what was right in front of her. The rest of the reception was a blur of people scrambling, gossiping, and walking out, leaving behind the wreckage of a once grand event. The glittering chandeliers, the expensive wine, the delicate hors d'oeuvres, everything that had symbolized wealth and perfection now felt hollow, empty. Chloe, Emma, and I stood at the back of the hall, away from the chaos, a strange peace settling over us. The storm had passed, and in its wake, all that remained was the truth. I didn't know what would come next. My family was broken, shattered in ways I couldn't begin to repair. But standing there, surrounded by the wreckage, I realized that I wasn't alone anymore. I had Chloe and Emma. I had the love of two little girls who, despite everything, still looked up to me. And that was more than enough. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and the truth? Would you stand up for what's right, even if it meant losing everything? What would you do if you were in Chloe's shoes? Let me know your thoughts. This story isn't over yet. The night after the wedding felt like a fog had settled over me. The drive back to the apartment was long and quiet. The only sounds in the truck, the soft hum of the engine, and the occasional hum of the radio. Chloe and Emma were both quiet, too quiet. Chloe had her arms crossed over her chest, her face set in that expression I'd seen before. The one that told me she was processing everything in a way that didn't quite make sense. Not yet. Emma, ever the optimist, was the first to break the silence. "Daddy," she said, her small voice breaking through the tension. "Will Aunt Olivia be okay?" I glanced at her through the rearview mirror. She was sitting up straight, her little face full of concern. It was the same innocence she'd had that morning when the world felt lighter, before everything got turned upside down. I thought about it for a moment. Olivia was crumbling. I'd seen it in her eyes. She was losing everything, and there was no way to go back. But what about us? What about me and Chloe? Was I willing to let everything break apart again? "I don't know, baby," I said softly, my voice barely audible. "I don't know what's going to happen next. But why did she do it, Daddy?" Chloe spoke up, her voice steady, but there was a quiver there. Why did Aunt Olivia lie? Why didn't she just tell the truth from the start? I felt a lump rise in my throat, and for a second, I didn't have the words. Chloe was right. If she had just told the truth from the beginning, maybe none of this would have happened. But the truth was a dangerous thing, and Olivia had spent years hiding it behind a mask of perfection. The family, the reputation, it was all she had left. The truth to her was too big, too destructive. "She probably didn't think anyone would find out," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, though it shook with the weight of the night.
Sometimes people lie because they're afraid of what will happen if the truth comes out. But you know what, Chloe? The truth always comes out sooner or later. It's just the way it works.
There was a long pause in the truck. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on us, each of us dealing with our own version of the same painful truth. I knew Chloe wasn't fully processing the magnitude of what had happened tonight. She was just a kid. But I also knew that in some way she understood more than I could ever say. I know. She had seen the cracks in the family's perfect facade before anyone else had. "We're okay, right?" Chloe's voice was barely above a whisper. "You and me and Emma? We're okay, right, Daddy?" I didn't answer immediately, but I didn't need to. I squeezed the steering wheel harder, taking in a deep breath. The streetlights outside flickered in the rearview mirror, casting long shadows across the pavement. "We're more than okay, Chloe," I said, my voice stronger now. "We're fine. We have each other. It's all that matters." And I believed it. In that moment, I believed it more than anything else. Everything else, the wealth, the status, the family legacy, meant nothing. I didn't need it. We didn't need it. We arrived back at our apartment, the same small place where we'd spent so many nights, where laughter still filled the air, and where, despite the peeling paint and the cramped corners, I had everything I needed. Chloe and Emma went straight to bed, exhausted from the chaos of the evening, but I couldn't sleep. I sat on the sofa, staring at the pile of bills on the coffee table. The light from the street outside filtered through the window, casting long shadows across the room. The reality of the evening still hung over me, and I couldn't shake the feeling of everything that had just happened. My family, my parents, had finally shown their true colors. They were never going to accept me for who I was, for the choices I had made. And that hurt more than I cared to admit. But it wasn't enough to break me anymore. I thought about the aftermath of the wedding, the whispers, the chaos, the way my father had screamed at me, blaming me for everything. But none of it mattered now. Chloe had stood up for me. She had stood up for us. And that was something I would carry with me forever. As the hours passed, I finally stood up and walked to Chloe's room. I opened the door quietly, making sure not to wake her. There she was, curled up in her blanket, a small figure in the middle of the bed, her face peaceful in sleep. For a moment I just watched her. She looked so much like Jenna sometimes, and I couldn't help but wonder what would have happened if things had been different, if we had stayed a family. But that was the past, and I couldn't live in it anymore. I kissed Chloe's forehead gently and then turned to Emma's room. She was sprawled out on the bed, her favorite stuffed bunny clutched to her chest. She looked so innocent, so unaware of the weight that had just shifted in our world. I kissed her too, brushing a strand of hair away from her face. She didn't stir, but I whispered softly, "I love you, sweet girl." And as I walked back to the living room, I made a promise to myself. I wasn't going to let my family's toxic legacy dictate my life. I wasn't going to allow their lies to define who I was. For the first time in years, I felt free. The next day, the world didn't change. My parents still didn't call. Olivia never reached out, and life went on. But there was something different. There was peace, a kind of peace that I hadn't known before. Chloe and Emma, despite the wreckage of everything, were happy. They were safe, and that was all I cared about. Over the following weeks, the rumors from the wedding continued to spread. I didn't keep up with them. I didn't need to. The video of Chloe speaking the truth had gone viral, and while it had made a lot of waves, it didn't change anything for me. The world had already decided its version of our story. But I knew the truth, and that truth was worth more than anything my family could ever offer me. One afternoon, a few weeks later, I came home from work to find a letter in the mailbox. It was from my parents. I didn't open it right away. I wasn't sure I wanted to read it. But later that night, after the girls had gone to bed, I sat down and unfolded the paper. It was a short letter written in my mother's elegant hand. Rowan, we have been thinking about everything that happened at Olivia's wedding. The family is, well, fractured. There's no denying that. Perhaps we have been wrong in the way we treated you. We didn't understand your choices, but we now realize that your daughters are a testament to your strength, your character. We hope you can forgive us, your mother, Carolyn. I sat there, the letter in my hand, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a weight lift. My parents had acknowledged the truth. They hadn't said it was okay, but they had come to terms with it, and that was enough for me. I didn't need them to fix everything. I didn't need them to accept me fully. What mattered was that I had found peace, had found my own way. And the most important part was that Chloe and Emma, the two people who meant everything to me, were right there beside me. No matter what the future held, we would face it together. Would you accept an apology like this from family, after all the hurt they caused? Or would you keep your distance, knowing that some wounds can never be healed? Let me know your thoughts. I'm curious to hear what you'd do in my shoes. As the days passed after receiving the letter from my parents, I couldn't stop thinking about what it all meant. The words on the page were polite, diplomatic even, but something about them felt like they had been written out of obligation, not genuine remorse. It didn't matter, though. What mattered was that I had moved on. I had made peace with myself, and more importantly, with Chloe and Emma. We had our own little world now, one where love and truth meant everything. I didn't need anyone else to validate that. Still, the thought of them, my parents, hung over me like a cloud I couldn't quite shake. I hadn't responded to the letter. No. I wasn't sure what I would say, or if I even needed to say anything at all. Part of me wanted to hold on to that letter, to treasure the small victory it represented, the acknowledgement that they had been wrong, that I had been right all along. But another part of me knew it was just another piece of their game, a piece of the same facade they had always clung to. And I didn't need that anymore. One evening, as I sat at the kitchen table, watching Chloe and Emma make arts and crafts, I realized something. I was no longer the man I had been when I walked out of my family's world. I wasn't the failure they had wanted me to be, the son who couldn't live up to expectations. I was someone stronger now, right? Someone who had learned that family wasn't about the money, the reputation, or the perfect image. It was about the people who loved you unconditionally. It was about the truth, even when it hurt. Chloe and Emma were in the living room, their laughter filling the space, and I felt a deep sense of gratitude. There were so many nights, especially in the beginning, when I had questioned everything. Nights when I felt like I had lost everything: my marriage, my family's approval, my sense of direction. But looking at them now, I realized that everything I had lost had made room for something so much more important. It had made room for us, for a love that was raw, real, and not weighed down by the pretensions of a world I no longer wanted to be a part of. "Daddy, look!" Chloe called from the living room, her voice bubbling with excitement. She held up a drawing she had been working on for hours. A picture of our family, all of us holding hands, standing together under a bright sun. My heart swelled as I took it from her. The picture wasn't perfect, but it didn't need to be. It was a representation of something real, of what we had, of what we were building together. "You did a great job, Chloe," I said, my voice thick with emotion.
Oh.
"This is beautiful. She grinned, her bright eyes shining with pride. "It's us, Daddy. I made sure to put us all together. I want us to be happy, just like this forever." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. Forever, the words seemed so simple, so full of promise. And for the first time in a long while, I believed it. We were going to be okay. No matter what happened, we were going to be okay. Emma, her little face streaked with colorful markers, looked up at me with her wide, trusting eyes. "Daddy, can we go to the park tomorrow? I want to play on the swings." I laughed, the sound escaping my chest more freely than it had in a long time. "Of course, sweetheart. We'll go to the park tomorrow." And just like that, I realized that I didn't need to wait for my parents' approval or anyone else's for that matter. I didn't need anyone to tell me I was doing okay. I already knew it. I had the two people who mattered most, and that was enough. The next morning, we went to the park. The girls ran ahead of me, their laughter echoing through the air, their carefree spirits a reminder of how much they had grown. I watched them play, their energy filling the space around us. As they swung high into the air, I sat on the bench, watching them with a contented smile. I had spent so much time trying to get something that was never meant for me, the approval, the legacy, the perfect family image. But here, with Chloe and Emma, I had everything I had ever needed. After a few hours, as the sun began to dip low in the sky, we made our way home. The girls were exhausted, their cheeks flushed with excitement, their smiles wide. They chatted excitedly about everything they had done at the park, about the swings, the slides, the ice cream we'd gotten afterward. Their joy was infectious, and as we walked, I felt a warmth spread through me, a peace that I had longed for, but hadn't known was possible. When we got home, there was a knock on the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I opened it cautiously. And standing there on my doorstep were two familiar faces, my parents. I froze, unsure of what to do. I hadn't seen them since the wedding, and my heart raced in my chest. My mother stood there, her arms folded tightly across her chest, her expression unreadable. My father was beside her, his eyes shadowed, his mouth set in a hard line. I wanted to close the door, to send them away. But Chloe and Emma were standing behind me, their faces full of curiosity, their little hands clutching mine. For a long moment, no one spoke. I could feel the weight of everything that had passed between us, all the years of distance, of judgment, of pain. And then finally, my father spoke. "We need to talk," he said, his voice stiff. "About what happened, about everything." I looked at him, at my mother, and then back at my girls, who were standing so close to me. And for the first time, I knew what I had to do. "Not right now," I said firmly. "You've had your chance. You've had years to talk to me. And when you chose to ignore me and my family, you chose your side." My father's eyes narrowed, but I didn't flinch. "Not welcome here anymore," I added quietly. "This is our life now. If you want to be part of it, you'll have to earn it. But we don't need your approval to know who we are." My mother's face twisted in anger, but I didn't care anymore. I had Chloe and Emma. That was all I needed. They were my family, and that was enough. I turned to Chloe, who had been watching all of this unfold, her eyes wide but resolute. She gave me a small, knowing smile. "We're okay, Daddy," she whispered, her voice steady. "We've always been okay." I nodded, holding her tight. And with that, I closed the door on my past, knowing that my future was already right here with me, more perfect, more real than anything I had ever imagined. What would you do if your family tried to come back into your life after years of judgment and pain? Would you welcome them, or would you choose to move forward without them? Let me know what you do in the comments. I'm curious to hear your thoughts.